Hello and welcome to Nicki Talks. This is the first of a series of interviews with Cape Ann people, remarkable Cape Ann people, and as a lifelong resident of Cape Ann, I know quite a few remarkable people who live here. And as David Letterman would say, today's guest needs no further introduction. Many of you are very familiar with Willie Loco Alexander. So thank you, Willie, for being my first victim here. You're very brave.
My pleasure.
So I just have a few questions I'm going to ask, and a lot of it will be conversational, just to find out more about you and your music and your life here in Gloucester. It's a short show, so we won't cover it all, but I really believe in the power of stories. Okay. So, and I know your story is incredible. So I'm going to just ask a couple of questions and see where we go. So Willie is a singer, songwriter, artist, and poet, and I know you were born in Philadelphia. That might be the extent of my research. Can you tell me a little bit about, when did you move to Gloucester and what your childhood was like here?
Well, I got to Gloucester in 1950. My father was a minister, and I was born in Philly, and then I can remember living in Medfield, Massachusetts, which is just down the road. And then we moved to Gloucester in 1950 because he got a job preaching at the Baptist church when there was a church at the end of Middle Street.
At the end of
on the
Middle
other
Street.
end from Joan of Arc.
Oh.
It's where there's a parking lot now across from the museum.
Oh.
So when I'd get out of church and stand with my father in front of the church, shaking hands and stuff, right across the street, there was a Salvation Army. The museum wasn't there then. But, so we came here in 1950. I think I was in the third grade.
Where'd you go to school?
Forbes School.
Mm-hmm.
Lived at 18 Washington Square,
Mm-hmm.
which is just a hop, skip, and a jump from the school.
Yeah, yeah.
And went to Central Grammar.
Yeah, me too.
And left here, I think, in the 7th grade or 8th grade. I don't know. We left Gloucester, and it was turning to 1956. I was turning 13 years old.
Mm.
So.
And why'd you leave then?
Another,
It's a different job.
Yeah, it seems like 5 years was the longest we were staying in one place.
Oh, I didn't realize
The
that.
way they shifted, they moved you around.
And what kind of minister was he?
He was a Baptist minister.
Yeah, Baptist minister.
Yeah.
Did he ever go to the South? Was there ever any?
He was born down there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering about the Baptist part, because often that's...
Yeah, he was born down there, but he never, ever talked about the South. Never talked about his parents, any uncles, or I can't remember him talking about anything about the South. It seemed like he just got out of Dodge.
Yeah,
and
that's interesting.
He never took us down there. I don't know if he took my mom down there at any point, but it's not that we had ever had too many heart-to-heart conversations about anything.
Oh, yeah.
He's one of those preachers, they say, that talks to God in the congregation, but doesn't really talk to his children or his family, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right. And did you go to church every Sunday?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And sing in the choir and do that
I
church stuff?
I was in a junior choir.
So maybe that was the beginning of...
I don't know. Well, it's just like, I'd always stare at him preaching and stuff.
Yeah.
And people are always going, oh, you got to follow your dad's footsteps and all that. It's like, I don't think so. I don't have any immediate plans to. But,
it didn't quite work out that way.
But I ended up standing in front of people doing stuff that was similar.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's true.
Just a different hairdo.
When did you sort of figure out that maybe music was going to be like the pole, your passion?
The radio always pulled me in. I always had a radio, and my grandfather, he was like a ham guy, so he always had tons of radio. So he always made sure I had a good radio, and I had this nice Zenith radio next to my bed, and I just loved listening to the radio. The kids' shows were all on. But the music, there wasn't a lot of great music, but I would find it, until...
What kind of music did you... So you're like
I liked
10, 11, 12, that kind of age?
Well, when I started listening to music, I heard they taking me to all kinds of church services.
Oh, right.
So it was all those old hymns and things. And my mother she was really a good musician. She played the violin, and she played the piano, and she sang. And she was in like civic symphonies. She was in the Civic Symphony in Medfield, Massachusetts, and she was in the Civic Symphony in Gloucester. So we'd go to all these concerts, and they'd always play stuff like Rhapsody in Blue and all of these like classic things. And I grew up liking all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I had a few favorite 78s that somebody left over at the house from some youth group thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, once we left Gloucester, I started hearing rock and roll here in Gloucester. There was 2 songs that I heard. One was Fats Domino, Ain't That a Shame?
Yep.
And the other was Tutti Frutti by Little Richard.
Yep.
And it's like, holy crap, listen to that.
I can imagine Tutti Frutti connected to you. Somehow there's something about the feel of that song.
Just all that
Little
stuff
Richard.
just killed me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's like, you know, my father, my happiest memory of him was when we were coming back from a camp. We used to go camping as a family down the Cape, and we lived in Rhode Island at the time. And we were driving the whole family, and all of a sudden Chuck Berry came on the radio with the rollover Beethoven.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, it's like, wow, this is the stuff.
Yeah.
And my dad turned the thing up and started beating on the
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's
and
great.
digging it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's like, wow, just like he wasn't putting the stuff down or anything.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's great.
And it had already grabbed a hold of me. I was sneaking into the church and banging on the old upright pianos, trying to play like Jerry Lee Lewis and guys like that. You know.
Oh, I love that. I can picture that.
And the piano was next to the television, and bandstand came on, and you know, trying to play along with that. And I had no idea about keys or anything. I was just pounding away. I don't know how it sounded.
Yeah.
But,
Well, it didn't matter because it sort of was
gradually
lead up.
You know, gradually I
that's
learned
great.
what scales were and things
Yeah.
like that, and that helped.
So did you end up taking music lessons, or you just never did?
I took some they call solfege classes when I was in high school, and it was a Saturday morning thing, and all these younger kids knew everything, and I knew nothing. And then and it was supposed to be a little private lesson after this theory stuff, and I would always like blouser my way through that and like sidetrack the guy from, like, you know, he'd give you something to do, and I wouldn't do it, of course, but I'd bring him music and say, what's this? Or I'd you know, but I'd buy sheet music sometimes and, you know, hand it to my mother. How does this go?
Yeah.
But I was kind of lazy, but I don't know, blame it on my schooling, that maybe I moved when they were teaching kids how to read music in this school or that school.
Maybe.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. So the piano was the first instrument that you actually
Yeah.
picked up, so to speak.
Yeah, but I was banging on suitcases and things, making my own drums.
Yeah.
You know, because I had to beat along with those rock and roll records.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you still have those records?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't tossed out anything. I'm not.
Yeah.
I go to Mystery Train all the time, and people bring in their collections. It's like,
Oh, I
what's
know.
the matter? You don't like music anymore? What is it? You know.
Records mine just got destroyed. You know, over the
A lot
years.
of mine
I
are
couldn't even play
scratchy,
it.
and either I scratched them or the cats have scratched the spines. And some cat years ago did that collection in, but
Yeah.
I
So do you play any other instruments?
just drums.
Drums and piano.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my understanding is, and again, I didn't do a huge amount of research, but I'm going to let you talk about it, about being sort of a pioneer in the world of punk rock. Would you say that's true?
Pioneer.
Pioneer, yeah.
Well, it's like, you know,
Covered wagon.
I prefer veteran.
Veteran, okay.
Well,
Veteran.
Pioneer. Well, they started calling me a veteran in the 70s, and it's like, you know, I started playing music in '64 as a rock and roll guy.
Yeah.
You know, playing in bars and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know, what was I leading up to? How did punk? It's just.
That's my question, really. You're answering it perfectly because I don't really know exactly.
It's
punk rock.
like in the '60s, that wasn't a term that was used.
Okay.
They call you this and they call you that. They're calling stuff we were doing folk rock, and they were calling it this. But it's like, you know, I listened to my voice, which it was hard for me to listen to for a long time, and it's like, what is it about that sound of my voice or something? And I don't know. By the '70s, maybe it was an attitude or something. But the so-called what became codified as punk rock was just usually a couple of chords and so very simple stuff. And I thought, well, I'm way more sophisticated than that. Huh. But it's like, as long as they don't call you late for dinner.
Yeah.
But it's like in the middle 70s, around Boston, people started to put out their own records. There's a movie that just came out called Boys from Nowhere.
Oh, I saw a clip of it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it talks about that period, and it's kind of like, I knew all these bands, and they were calling me the godfather of punk rock and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I was just like the elder statesman, because I'd been doing it since, 64.
Right.
And had some experience. So I just, passed on what I knew to other people and encouraged them.
Yeah.
But it's like, stylistically, all the bands that were called punk didn't sound what you'd call punk. It became a marketing device.
Right. Okay.
There was punk, it was a new wave, now it's this or that.
Right. Yeah.
They're always going to call it something. To me, it's always just music. To me, I've always kind of been the same.
Yeah, I was just going to ask whether you feel like it's been evolved.
But sometimes I'll have guitars around me, or sometimes saxophones.
Yeah.
So
would you say that your music is still pretty similar to kind of where you started, or where your own musical
Not
roots?
the way I put it together.
Huh. What does that mean?
Like, well, in the old days, you sort of like when it's like, okay, I'm going to write a song, and then you teach somebody a song.
Yep.
But nowadays, I go into the studio, and I'll make a track, and then, hopefully I'll bring the track home, and something will trigger something, and I'll say, oh, this can go here, because I get notebooks full of lyrics and things. And just, it's like making a puzzle now. And especially nowadays, I work with Tony Goddess at Bang a Song, and I'll have, specific ideas. These words, I can't put them over in this track. I've got 5 tracks I'm working with here. I think this will work here. But then I end up using this for that, and it's like, no, it's not all formed at once.
Yeah.
It's like really making a puzzle and fitting pieces together. It's all kind of an illusion anyway.
Yeah.
And now with the technology, it's like, in the old days, you had to splice with a razor blade, and there's tape all over the floor. Now it's all, he's got his confuser, and there's a little mountain line, and it's all computer stuff.
Right.
And it's like, okay, press that one there. It's like, make me sound like the Andrews Sisters. Yeah. So you can do all this stuff. Boom.
That's incredible.
And you can walk out of the studio with a tape or a CD.
Yeah.
In the old days, you had to arm wrestle the engineer for a cassette if you were lucky.
Yeah.
Because it was just too hard. They just couldn't do stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is so different.
The digital world is good.
Yep. So
and you can record in your house. You don't have to.
Right.
I've done a lot of that.
Yeah.
I've either recorded the whole thing in the house or just pieces and then brought them into the studio.
Yeah.
But I can walk to Bang a Song in like under 5 minutes, so it's like great.
You mean you can walk right to the studio in under 5 minutes?
It's on Main Street. It's underneath CVS.
Oh yeah. Oh.
It's down there.
Okay, that's great.
There's a whole floor of music and wonderment.
Wow. Who knew? Not me.
Right.
That's great.
There. It's amazing.
So if you think about,
and he's a perfect partner in crime. It's like, oh man, because I was doing most of my recording with my drummer Jim, Jim Dougherty, lives up in Maine. And it's like, first we'd made albums together, and then he moved to Baltimore, and that was like, oh Jesus, were we ever going to play again? But now he's in Portland, so I can snag him for gigs here and there.
Yeah.
And sometimes he brings his recording equipment to the house. And
so how often are you doing that? How often are you doing gigs?
Gigs?
Like how often are you kind of out there?
Well, it seems lately, it's like I played with my Boom Boom Band again, which we don't play very often. I mean, we formed in '76.
Yeah.
Broke up in '78, something like that.
Yeah.
But and I've got some Persistence of Memory ones. Mm-hmm. And Friday I'm just playing. I got a sit-down gig, playing a grand piano and saxophone.
Wow.
And that'd be cool.
Where's that?
In Somerville at the Third Life Studio.
Oh yes, I think I saw that too on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was a cool poster somebody made.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow. So that's different. So, I never, and I got a rum line gig. I mean, every gig's got like a different set of characters. Sort of.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So it's not like it used to be where it's all one focus. The band lives together and all that. That doesn't really work.
Right.
I don't think people do that anymore.
No, they probably don't.
Nowadays,
they don't need to.
The older musicians, or older, even the young ones, playing 3 or 4 different outfits.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way it is.
Mm-hmm. So when you look back on all the performances that you've been involved in over these years, what do any just jump to mind about being either somehow outstanding, like a disaster, or the best ever?
Oh, there's been many disasters and many great things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, last Saturday was the Boys from Nowhere night. That was wonderful because we hadn't played for a while, and it was a real theater.
Yeah.
So it's like, a sound check with sound men and 3 or 4 people making sure everything is just right, all that, and just looking up at the theater. It's like I felt like Stephen Hawking's looking out at the universe because you could see the ceiling and all of this. The Cabot Theater is wonderful.
Yeah, the
used to see the magic shows there.
Me too. Yeah.
So it was, and then playing old theaters. I always like playing the old theaters.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to playing in a bar room. People are sitting there listening.
Right.
I mean, they do that at the Cape Ann Cinema when you play up there. I got another gig coming up there.
When is that one?
That's on May 4th.
And is it part of something else, or it's just you and your music?
No, my music and What Time Is It, Mr. Fox?
Oh, good,
And Rick Berlin.
Good.
And a woman named Ruby Rose, who I don't know yet, but the other guys vouch for her, so it was just part of the show. So it should be a great show.
Yeah, it sounds great.
We did one other one last year
Mm-hmm.
with everything except Ruby Rose, and it was we're compatible. I thought, wow, 3 singer-songwriter guys, but it worked because we're all totally kind of different from each other. But I go way back with Rick Berlin. He was playing Sandy's and places like that, like I was back in the early 70s and stuff. And the early 70s is when I met certain Beverly musicians that we played with last Saturday, and they became the Nervous Eaters. They had another name before that, and I was part of it when they were called. Shall I say it on TV?
I don't know. Try it.
No, I won't.
Is it X-rated?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, maybe not. Maybe not.
Well, what you told your mom was the name of the band was the Rhythm A's.
Okay.
So just
you
can fill in the blanks.
Good. It's funny because when you were talking earlier about music and the process of creating with words that you want to say, language you want to use, and music and instruments, it made me think about your collage work, which I've seen a little bit of, but it's sort of...
Well, that's how I'm putting them together. That's how it works now.
Yeah.
It's like I go to Idaho because my wife's from out there, and it's like, I'll read the newspapers, and I got this obituary about some guy who had a bar called Bud's Twilight Lounge. So, wow, that sounds really cool. So I just wrote that down, and 8, 9 years later, I'm going, yeah, Bud's Twilight Lounge, and then I'm making up a story about at every table somebody knows your name, and just all this stuff.
Right.
And then I have a couple of French phrases, and I don't know French very well. And it's like, and then it's like, okay, that's weird. And I have a saxophone comes in here, and then there's the drums that I made, and it's like, and it's done.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that's kind of pretty cool. But it's not like, verse, chorus, verse.
Right.
None of it's like that for me anymore. I mean,
yeah.
I kind of like to work that way, I suppose, but I never had the same MO for every song ever.
Yeah.
There's one important rule for up-and-coming songwriters that was good advice to me was they all can't be the Mona Lisa. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Some might be greater than others.
Yeah.
So you just gotta, I'm just lucky that anything comes through.
Yeah.
I think they're coming from somewhere else anyway. It's
the muse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know who's moving the hand.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Who's
who's making all the big decisions? It's not me.
I remember seeing
I
a
just want to
quote
get in the way.
from Alice Walker, I think, or maybe it was Toni Morrison, saying, someone asked her something like, how do you make up these characters, these unbelievable characters? And she said, well, I don't really make them up.
Right.
You know, they come to me, and then, you know, I just listen, and I write them down, like the color purple, or, you know, same idea.
I trip over stuff in the street, or it's something real. It's not like I'm making up a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's something real usually triggers everything.
Yep. Well, like the was it the Twilight Cafe?
Yeah, Bud's Twilight Lounge.
Bud's Twilight Lounge. But I mean, the fact that you kind of still had that, even though it could have been years.
And I've done that. I've used lines that I've written years before.
Yeah,
and finally find a place for them.
Yeah.
It's if I haven't thrown them away after a certain period of time, or if I see the same line in several different places, because I think I'm writing it new every time, probably.
Exactly.
But
that's so
this
great.
Must be a good one.
Yeah.
You know? So you use them.
So how do you do that? Like some people would put it on a...
My organization isn't the best. I have all of these millions of notebooks. I had a line too. It's like millions of notebooks and nothing to say and all this. And you know, anyway.
So you flip through them?
It's like, but it's like the last thing I want to do sometimes is finally get to looking, because I'm afraid I'm not going to find anything.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't write anything anymore. So it's like you go through all this doubt and whatever, and then a miracle happens, and something's done.
That's exactly how I think of it. So do you still do collage work? You do?
Yeah, I've kind of been slacking a little bit, but I'm still amassing what I use. I mean, I use newspapers and trash floating down the street, and when I'm traveling, I rip things off of telephone poles, and you know, it's all paper, and it's all maybe disposable, and maybe it's all trash, in a sense. You know?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm making steel sculptures and I'm picking up rocks and I'm taking pieces of things and mashing them together. It's just like the music now.
Yeah,
To me,
it does just exactly.
It seems like maybe I've always been a collage kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it sort of sounds like
I was putting tons of James Dean pictures on my wall when I was about 12. It's like maybe that was my first wall, you know.
Yeah, he's definitely a hero.
Yeah.
Rebel without a cause, right?
All of those.
Yeah.
Yep. That's where you get your hairstyle from, too.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
James Dean?
Sure, it's all modified James Dean, isn't it?
Maybe.
I don't know.
I was once in a play at the Blackburn Theater Company. Come back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean.
Yeah. I remember that one. I remember that title.
Yeah. That was fun. So I wanted to ask you something else about the collage, because I'm sort of fascinated by it. One of the things about collage more in my field is that it's used a lot as a healing modality. I don't know if you are aware of that.
And just making stuff?
Make the collage in particular.
Yeah. Huh.
You know, so with kids, for example, or teenagers, you can have really amassed a lot of things that they can use and just give them time to create something with all these different images. And it's very, I think because of the mode of expression, it's very powerful for kids to see their finished thing, you know, and they are really the only ones who understand what they're saying in it, which is fine.
Well, that's the way it is with all art. It's like, you don't want to tell everybody what you might be thinking, so it's going to spoil for whatever it's going to, you know.
Yeah, it kind of takes their thinking possibility away if you just tell them.
Me and artists, it's like you either like it or you don't. You know, it's like I don't really want to read a book so I can understand this painting or this poem. If it hits me in the gut somehow, that's all it really counts for me.
Yep.
But I mean, it's like, you know, I try and stretch my brain here and there.
Yep. I'm just looking at my notes because I know we're running out of time. I know that you recently had a couple of losses, 2 friends all in the same week.
Well, practically, there was 3 people that meant something
Gloucester
to me.
people, right?
Yeah.
Garrett Lansing.
Garrett and Fred Buck and Frankie. Frank from Gloucester.
Oh, I don't know Frank.
He was a street guy.
Oh.
A guy that was on this, not a street, it wasn't like a homeless person, but he was just usually sitting on one of the benches in Main Street with a portable radio.
Oh.
And he was a big Yankees fan. The Red Sox suck.
I know who you mean.
And he would call up radio stations, and he was a big celebrity over the air. But he was just a character that I put in all my little flip movies and stuff.
Yeah.
He was one of my stars.
Yeah.
And then Fred Buck, you know, he was somebody that you know, I wrote this whole opus about him, you know.
Right.
And we became friends, and I played in a band with him and everything. And
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
so he went, and then Garrett went.
Yeah.
And I just lost a cousin, but
Yeah.
but people say it's, you know, you get to a certain age, and this is what happens.
I guess I can attest to that because we're similar age.
But I mean, you know, in the '80s, I started losing people.
Yeah.
To AIDS and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's like, you know,
So
we're all lucky we're still here.
I know, which makes you think about how you want to use your time, what you got left, you know.
Yeah, right.
So, we're about to wind down here. So I wanted to ask you, I don't know, I guess just, is there something kind of on your bucket list, I guess, that you, creatively speaking, you know, that you would either like to experience or share or say or have an impact on, or, I mean, is there anything, you know, some people want to go skydiving, not me, but.
Not me. I think I'd like to see the Grand Canyon someday.
I've never seen it either.
Yeah, and I'd like to get back to New Orleans, because for me, that's the Holy Land.
Yeah.
All my music that I love comes from there. Well, it comes from lots of places.
Yeah.
But it came together there, so we say.
Yep.
And it's just wonderful. But
are you familiar with?
And it's like, you know, I hope to finish a couple more songs, and then I'll have enough for the next album. So I got 6 that are done, and
oh, that's great.
And I got like 4 tracks that I'm, you know, not sure about.
Yep.
And it's happening.
Yep.
But I got sidetracked by all these friends dying.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Did,
and then shows that I have to focus on.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm looking through the books for lyrics.
Yeah. Looking through the books. Chords. Now I have a very mental image of that.
I got tons of these things.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I just hope to finish, you know, keep doing it. And I mean, I love to play music.
Yeah.
You know, I say the before is hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Just leading up to it, but.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once I'm there, it's as long as it's still kind of a magic thing. And if you can get a reaction that's good, great.
Yeah. It
If
is
you're
kind
not,
of a magic
you're going to
thing.
do it because you have to do it.
No. Right.
I mean that's what I do. That's what I've been doing for a long time now.
Yeah. Just to keep doing it in itself is a wonderful thing, right? It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. Well, thank you so much, Willie.
Thank you
for being my first brave. It was wonderful talking to you.
Well, that wasn't so bad.
That wasn't so bad. I remember the when Playing for Change first came out. Do you ever see any of that music? I think it's basically geared to bring together musicians from all over the globe and sing songs of justice and peace and beautiful blues. And but it really reminded me when it first came out about the healing power of music and the flow of the listener and the performer.
I know for me, music probably saved me. It completely captivated me at an early age, and that's where I went.
Yeah.
Ended up.
Yeah.
And I may have done other things. You know, I've worked in group homes. I've been a dishwasher. I've done a lot of stuff.
Right.
But it's always in conjunction with the music.
Yeah, that's really great. Okay, well, thanks again.